Hi everyone. My name is Iman from Group 4, and as part of our Module 4, which is Editing Communication Materials, I'm here to talk about what editing is and give an overview of what the rest of the module will discuss. Again, this module talks about editing communication materials. My groupmates and I will go over the following topics. First, what is editing, which is this presentation, and the rest of the reporters will talk about the copy editor and the three-step method, tools and marks of the editor, practical tips on grammar and style, and finally, the qualities of a good editor. For my discussion, I'll talk about the general process of editing. This presentation will be divided into three parts. First, what is editing? Here, I'll provide a short history of the changing roles of editors, and from there, define what goes into the editing process itself. Second, we discuss why editing is important. We look back at the principles of writing presented in Module 3 and how this should likewise reflect in our editing process. I'll also reflect on how editing is important to us DevCom practitioners. Finally, I'll talk about the editorial stages or the types of editing. While these stages are more common in the publishing industry, we'll try to distill the stages and talk about what's most relevant to us in our own writing and the production of DevCom materials. Before anything else, I wanted to ask the class, do you have a favorite editor? I know that we all have ready answers for the question, who's your favorite writer, but none for editors. Why do you think this is the case? We don't normally look for editors because the job is mostly isolated in the background, behind the scenes. Their closest contact is the author or writer, not the reader. In fact, the editors are the first readers of authors. Before anything gets read by us, whether in newspapers, journals, books, an editor gets to see it first before we do. This is the ideal scenario. The role of an editor has changed over time. For example, many centuries ago, the editors were scholars and scribes. Think about the first people who discovered the manuscript of the Bible and had to translate, decode, and eventually edit it. Eventually, there were commissioners of these texts, like high churchmen and royal patrons, who had a hand in picking what gets published and distributed to the public. By the 15 to 1600s, with the invention of the printing press, editors turned into compilers who devoted their time in curating and developing books. Then, the quality of the editing was a critical part of production. Publishing houses also learned to develop new types or new typographies and layouts so that each page is used efficiently and economically. By the 1800s, the demand for more books would grow, and editors turned into sales partners of authors. Publishers would be in the market for bestsellers, a relationship model that exists until today, as editors are now agencies or the official representation of most well known authors. By the 1900s up to the present, publishing houses follow editorial policies reflected by their political or social opinion. Editors and publishers are now viable career paths. Since competition is becoming more fierce, editors work on their material to make it as good as possible to maintain edge against others. Despite the changing roles, the more common notion of what an editor is or does has not changed. An editor, as we know it, checks whether the information presented is complete and accurate. An editor identifies whether there are some materials which are unfit for print or whether the information is newsworthy or interesting enough to publish. And an editor observes if the general presentation of ideas is coherent and clear among others. The process of editing, therefore, is the rewriting or revising of a text to make it acceptable for public presentation and or publication. It's not just about correcting grammar and typo or making sure that style is consistent. Editing ensures that our writing is clear, cohesive, correct, and complete, and is free of mistakes and errors. It checks if the principles of clear and effective writing are applied. This is connected to our next point, which is why is editing important? It's important because it helps us keep track on the principles of clear and effective writing as discussed in Module 3. To review, here are the 14 principles. In application, for example, Editors check for grammar and help us keep our words simple, short, and straight to the point. Editors remove jargon or too technical terms for a reader. Editors keep our sentences and paragraphs short, and editors adjust our language to be more specific and concrete. Editors help us arrange our material more logically, ensuring the smooth flow of ideas. Ultimately, editing shows that we are diligent, professional, and serious in the work that we do. As DevCom practitioners, we want our communication materials to be flawless, understandable, and effective. And having an editor as our second set of eyes helps ensure that we do all this while keeping in mind the message we want to convey. Now we move on to the different editorial stages. There are 7 stages of editing followed in publishing. For book writers, editors are there for them from the first outline of the book project until its eventual printing and release. I won't be going into detail as to what each stage of editing entails, but rather handpick a few that is most relevant to us in our own work and editing communication materials. For us, these 3 stages are the most relevant: developmental editing, copy editing, and proofreading. Further in the module, you'll notice that these 3 stages are similar to the copy editor's 3-step method, but allow me to go through these one by one. Developmental editing is about fixing the blueprint. It focuses on the foundation of the narrative or material we're writing, the bare bones, so to say, and sees to it that each section or part of the material fits the overall messaging of the comms product. Developmental editing is about rearranging and arranging the structure of the text to ensure the logical flow and coherence of ideas. When doing this kind of editing, it's best to refer back to your outline and check if the transitions between parts flow smoothly. If something is out of place, this is where we arrange and rearrange. Copy editing, meanwhile, is about refining the text. This is where we review syntax, paragraph structure, sentence structure, tone, readability, spelling, and grammar. This may also include line editing, another type of editing, which improves the elegance of the prose and author's voice and style. Copy editing is where the bulk of the work goes. Our material goes through numerous cycles of reading and revising until it is almost flawless and scotch free. Finally, we have proofreading. Proofreading is the final checkpoint, the editing that happens after layouting but before printing. It's about reviewing the more technical components of the material, such as typographical errors, punctuation, formatting, footnoting, and citations, and if it adheres to a certain style guide, as the case may be. Being a proofreader is my day job. I currently work as a proofreader and speechwriter for one of the justices of the Supreme Court. As a proofreader, I'm assigned cases to edit and review before it is promulgated by the court. It entails a lot of this and more, so much so that our work also entails some copy editing. So there really is a fine line that separates copy editing and proofreading depending on who you ask. So there you have it. To summarize, editing is the rewriting and revising of a text to make it acceptable for public presentation and publication. Editing is important because it ensures that we follow the principles of clear and effective writing, therefore making us effective communicators. The essential stages of editing are developmental editing, copy editing, and proofreading. We can use these types of editing when we work on our communication materials. As a final note, we have to remember editing takes practice and practice takes time. By having in mind the principles of clear and effective writing and knowing what to check once we begin editing our own work, eventually we will get the muscle memory for it. Eventually, it will become natural for us to be good writers, good editors, and good communicators. In conclusion, doing the nitty gritty work of editing and learning how to be good editors of our own work show that we are serious about the comms material we are writing. This reflects well not only on the quality of our outputs, but also on the rigor we exert on who we are as DevCom practitioners. After this discussion, I wanted to pose the following questions. First, how do we move forward and hone our editing skills if there are all these AI tools offering to do the tedious work of copy editing and proofreading for us? Second, as a DevCom communicator, do you think the editing process and its stages are redundant and or unnecessary? Why or why not? Here are my references. And once again, thank you for listening. I'll see you at the discussion forum.